to the Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11, breaking down tonight's 6-game NBA slate, taking a look at some minutes, some injury news that's likely to come out here probably throughout the day, looking at some Vegas totals right now. And jumps out off the map right now is looking at the two later games, of course. Looking at Portland and Washington, Los Angeles and Orlando being the two games I'm really looking at target. 211, 212 there. Portland favored by 5.5. Orlando favored by 3. Looking on basically between the four teams there, it's going to be a pretty good place to find most of your fantasy points tonight. And I think you're looking at the general core around that area. Looking elsewhere, Utah, Atlanta, a really unappealing 192. But I do like the Jazz big men. You look at Atlanta, they're not a great rebounding team. You look at Gobert. Pretty cheap around the industry, so I do like him a little bit tonight, and I'll talk about him a little bit later. Denver and New York has no spread or no total coming out yet, but you got to anticipate that one being a generally favorable total tonight to target. I think you're looking at both sides. And, there's some Porzingis questionable news that we're looking at, so I think that's why we haven't seen anything. Minnesota and Spurs, that's a little iffy for me. 10.5 point spread there, 206 total. Spurs coming off the back-to-back, so let's take a look and see what Pop does today. But you got to anticipate everyone playing outside of maybe Duncan, maybe Ginobili, maybe Parker. Those are always the iffy guys that you need to keep an eye on back-to-backs, especially on the road. Toronto and Brooklyn, this one's iffy. 12-point spread there. Brooklyn's keep this game close, but you're going to have to rely a lot on Thad Young and Brook Lopez to keep that one there. Toronto with a 110 total. You're looking at Lowry, DeRozan being really solid plays there, but also the blowout concern could cap their true upside if it gets out of hand. But that's something to really look at tonight because both those guys, high usage, they're always involved in the high total games, so you do like that. Looking at point guards tonight, no injuries to really concern ourselves with, so it's kind of nice here early. But Damian Lillard, John Wall, Kyle Lowry, all sitting up top. The matchup between Damian Lillard and John Wall didn't really kick off to a big fireworks show like we thought it was the last time out. Lillard just went for 27 fantasy points, and John Wall went for 34, so it wasn't a particularly solid shooting night on both sides. Neither failed, or both failed to reach over 20 real points. I think that changes tonight. Obviously, it was an off game. I do like Lillard tonight at home against Washington with his high usage. He'll be the one I'll be paying up for in that matchup. I really like Lowry and GPPs. I just think Brooklyn keeps that game close. He's going to go off for his 40 plus, 45 plus that he has so far in two matchups against them. He's torched them for absolutely 24, 5, and 7 on average, shooting 63% from the field against Brooklyn this season. They're horrible against point guards. The blowout concern is the only thing that really is the really only concern there. Matchup-wise, it's great. So you're playing Lowry or DeRozan, you're kind of looking maybe you play Thad, maybe you play Lopez, just to maybe one of the two, just to bank on them keeping that game close, and it's going to come from both of those guys, so if it does happen. Looking a little bit lower, D'Angelo Russell going to be a really chalky play tonight. Expect his ownership to be through the roof in cash and GPPs, as it should be. DK has kind of heightened his salary, which is nice. He's up to $6,900. FanDuel is still catching up, still pretty cheap, so expect him to be much higher on there. Of course, you like him going up against Orlando, and why wouldn't you? He's averaging 22, 4, and 3 over the last 5 games, shooting 47% from 3. Guys on Fire gets a great matchup against Orlando, who are traveling back down from Golden State on the back-to-back here tonight. So Russell definitely in play in all formats, going to be a staple for a lot of the lineups tonight. But a guy you can maybe pivot off to and maybe hope Russell has a down game, but although he hasn't, the only time he has is against Atlanta in what seems to be the last week or so, is Emmanuel Mudiay, kind of sneaky tonight. Averaging 15, 4, and 7 over the last 5 games. Back-to-back games of scoring 40-plus fantasy points, 39 the game before that against the Lakers. Has had some cupcake opponents. You're looking at Dallas, Brooklyn, Lakers over that span. But Obviously, another matchup against the Knicks, who have struggled against point guards. Like Moutier tonight is kind of a different move. Maybe even paying down a little bit. Maybe pay Russell and Moutier. No need to go up at point guard with those guys and what they're doing of late. So definitely keep him on your radar. Looking cheaper, Elfrid Payton, Jordan Clarkson, kind of guys on my radar. Payton, the minutes weren't necessarily there like they used to be as a consistent threat, but looking at last night's game, 24 points in 23 minutes against Golden State, you saw Jennings play a lot down the stretch because they were chasing the game from behind. Jennings more of a shooter, Payton more of a playmaker role guy, true point guard style. Still, I mean, 3 steals in each of the last 2 games. I look him to get more minutes, right around that 28 range tonight, which will be solid against the Lakers defense that's, we've known, hapless against point guards, hapless against every position. So look at Payton tonight, of course. Jordan Clarkson, also another solid play, but really consistent here. Healthy, played 37 minutes in the last game, went 25 and 4 with 2 steals. Shot the ball, really well. So if any news comes out about Kobe taking a day off again or something, his ailing shoulder, his ailing old body, they would receive extreme bumps for tonight's slate. So if you're looking at it cheaper, it doesn't get much better than that. I think really Payton's about what you're going to get. Not a big fan of Jeff Teague. Yes, coming off a nice solid game against the Clippers, but a guy who's just really inconsistent minute-wise. He's been outplayed by Schroeder at times. Not a big fan of that, especially against Utah. So that'll be a pass for me. So looking at more minutes, DJ Augustine, yes, he's been getting minutes 27, 20, 23 over the last 3 games. I don't believe you need to pay down for him at all tonight on tonight's slate. It's just, one, there's no real big superstar that you need to fit into your lineups like a Cousins, Davis, Durant. You don't have those types of players going tonight in 6 games. You just don't need to punt at a point guard position that has really good spots, at decent price tags. So not really on my radar, but if he did, you're looking at maybe 20, 25 fantasy points at the most in pretty limited minutes. But he's been decent, but still not a guy on my radar tonight. Looking at shooting guard, Bradley Beal is the news. Didn't travel with the team, so we already know he's going to be out. Garrett Temple's going to be the guy who slips into the starting rotation. But it's been really Otto Porter who's taken maybe the number 2 role from Beal as far as the score goes alongside Wall. I don't like Porter tonight just because he's going up against Aminu. That's just a very tough matchup I've learned to fade against just because he is terrific on defense. So Porter not really on my radar tonight. You're really looking at Wall and a couple guys down low that we'll talk about a little bit. But top options, DeMar DeRozan once again. Looking at him, hoping that game stays close. Because CJ McCollum's right there, it's just an easier call for me, really in all formats. Just because he's got the consistent cash game level. The upside's been decent at times. Coming off a 36-38 DK point game there with 5 assists in each, 2 steals in each. So you like that. I like the matchup against Washington. Not a great, wing defense at all. McCollum's just a safe play. His price has come down just a little bit. So I'm a big fan of him tonight, and I think Victor Oladipo's along similar lines, going up against one of the worst defenses in the league, if not the worst. So just being in closer games, I just think you look at McCollum and Oladipo as your guys over DeRozan. But I do think Toronto's going to be a little bit under-owned tonight. So if you are hoping that game stays close, they make this for solid contrarian plays. Unfortunately, the Minnesota team, I don't target against the Spurs. They limit upside. They limit cash game consistency. As good as Levine has been, it's a tough pass for me tonight on him. Same with Wiggins. Evan Fournier played 35 minutes, 30 points last night, back to his usual self there. That's nice to see. Getting a solid matchup against the Lakers. Of course, the entire Orlando team is in play tonight, so you do like him a lot at that price. He's kind of slipped back down just a little bit when he was really going off for about what seemed to be 30 points every night, fantasy points. So he's kind of crept down to below 6K again, so it's nice to see. If you're looking cheaper, no questionable tag next to Kobe Bryant, but only to play 24 minutes, and I think his minutes are going to be pretty limited. Even at a depreciated price tag, he's not worth it. I don't see him playing 30 minutes. I don't see the upside really being there. You want to take a shot because you're a Kobe fan? Go for it. Looking cheaper, Gary Harris. You want to talk about minutes. I mean, the guy's averaging 40, nearly 41 over the last 5 games, averaging 17, 2, and 2 over the last 5 there, shooting 50% from the field. Shooting guard's not great. And I'm not a big fan of Harris's price tag being at $5K now, but value's pretty iffy because now you're starting to look at Danny Green, who's only going to score either 8 points or he's going to score you 30. There's no in between with him. It's not a safe cash game play ever. Aaron Aflalo, been a little bit better of late. Looking averaging 29 fantasy points over the last 4 games, shooting 63% from the field. He's the guy I would rather take just in that situation. It's just a better matchup. You're looking at guys who don't have played a ton of minutes. Mario Hezonja, Kyle Korver, Ginobili, Bogdanovich in a tough matchup. So you're looking at Aflalo being the guy, at Harris as well. I think those are the cheap point guards. Markel Brown, you're looking at minutes here, 29, 33, 13, and 27 over the last 4 games there. He's really produced back-to-back games with 24 or with 20-plus real points against Minnesota and Denver. Tougher matchup against Toronto. Any other matchup would be worth a punt look, but I just don't feel like punting on this slate. I just don't think you need to. Moving over to small forward, this one really top-heavy. Carmelo Anthony, Kawhi Leonard are your top options, obviously. Melo's been solid of late. Obviously, the high-usage guy there, 24, 9, and 4 over the last 5 games, rebounding well. So you do like that. Not a defensive guy, but his ceiling has been there. His floor has been there of late. I do like him, especially in what's going to be a closer game. So Kawhi Leonard, on the other hand, saw a little bit of a down performance. Only shot 9 and 23 last night. Usage was there. Defensive stats were not. Still scored 23 points, 35 DK points. Played big minutes. The blowout concern's a little bit iffy for me, but I think, if I'm paying up, I like Melo a little bit more. I think Leonard's upside's a little bit capped for me. You look at 2 games against Minnesota, averaging 18 and 8 and 2, right around 39 fantasy points. But at that price tag, when I can get Melo for a little bit more, who kind of closer to guaranteed to get over 40 and creep up into a higher 40 range, I like Melo. As far as other guys, as good as Gordon Hayward's been, the cheaper price tag compared to the other 2, I don't hate him, but I don't love him either. You're looking at been consistent, averaging 22, 4, and 4 over the last 5 games. A tougher matchup against the Hawks. They haven't been great defensively this season, as far as fantasy points allowed wise. So I don't hate it if he fits. If you need to come off one of the top 2 for him, I don't mind it. But I'm not expecting a ton out of him tonight. But I think 30, 35 fantasy points is right where you're going to see him, which is decent on this size slate, just because you're looking at these lower options. Kent Bazemore, bad matchup. Otto Porter, bad matchup. Al-Farouq Aminu, so up and down. You never know what you're going to get from him. Could get you above 25 fantasy points in that range. Could get you 8. Could get you 16. It's iffy, and I think you're better off paying up for a small forward tonight, just instead of dealing with these guys, because you're looking Jared Dudley, not getting the minutes he used to be. You've seen Markieff Morris slip into a bigger role. If Porzingis sits, you saw Derek Williams get the start, but only played 19 minutes last game. Something I don't want to touch. But keep an eye on that one just to see the possible situation there, because you saw Lance Thomas play a lot of the 3, and you saw Melo shipped over to the 4 a little bit more. So that was really the big impact from Porzingis. So small forward, completely ugly tonight. Looking at top options at power forward, like favors in this matchup. I do like the big man for Utah. Of course, against Atlanta, who ranked 29th in rebounding. They've struggled against power forwards and centers this season tremendously. Like him a lot. Should be a closer game, which helps him out. Looking at other options here, Aldridge in range for me. Really consistent. You're talking about a guy who's dropped 20-plus real points over the last 4 games, 45, 38, 40, and 50 points. Coming off a nice outing against Indy. Double-digit rebounds in 3 of the last 4 games there. Should have another one tonight. Minnesota's been decent against power forwards, but Aldridge, I'll take it, that depreciated price, especially just because there's some other options that in that range, like Thad Young. Good, but not in the best of matchups there. You're kind of banking on him to maybe keep that game close with his higher usage and role in that offense with no Joe Johnson. But Aaron Gordon's the guy I'm looking at, coming off a monster game against Golden State, 20 and 16 with a block and a steal. Shot the ball well. Shot the ball surprisingly well of late. I mean, you're looking at the last 6 games, 53%. I mean, the really only duds that he's dropped against Phoenix and Dallas, it's a little concerning over the last stretch that he had. But this guy was nailing down 30-plus fantasy points night in and night out for about a month, it seemed. And you expect him to do it here again against the Lakers, especially with Vooch looking to be out down low. Didn't play last night. Not like he scratched again with the groin injury. So keep an eye on him. It just helps guys out like Gordon. The usage is just going to shift to the starters, so I do like that a lot. Kenneth Faried, great GPP guy, as we have seen, 25 and 20 in 36 minutes. Game win OT. We've seen him do it in less than that. We've seen 33 and 28, 38 and 28, 39 and 23 minutes. The minutes are always inconsistent, which I don't like, because if he doesn't get that fast start, that high fantasy points per minute that he brings, he's going to drop a dud. So always a great GPP play. I'd rather take Julius Randle, who's been a little bit more consistent, gets a little bit more consistent minutes, right around 29, 30 on a night-in, night-out basis, averaging 15 and 10. So he's just a safer cash game play, but Faried definitely has the higher upside there. A guy I'm looking at tonight, Markieff Morris. The minutes have started to trend upward. The consistency's been a little bit better. Still, I think on a short slate, he is going to play for GPPs for me tonight. I'm looking at a 5,500 price tag, and a matchup against Portland that's not really intimidating, and averaging 11 and 7 over the last 6 games there, 26 minutes per game. Starting to kind of get eased into Washington, starting to look at him as a bigger role player down low. I think he is a sneaky play tonight. GPP isn't getting good exposure to that game. It's going to be high scoring and close. So give him a look. Outside of that, he's really the only cheaper option that I'm looking at. There's going to be no Thomas Robinson or Willie Reed that come in and save the day like there was the other night when everyone sat out. So power forward is just always a steady range of discount guys in that 6K range. So that's where I'll be sitting tonight. Looking at power or center here, Vooch we mentioned, we saw Jason Smith be the guy last night for about 23 minutes. Not really in play for me tonight, even though it was a solid matchup. Rather take the other guys that have been producing over the course of the season. But Towns up top, Lopez up top, Horford up top. Basically 4 of the top centers just not really on my radar tonight. I like Brook Lopez's high usage. I like him in tournaments. I can't get behind him in cash games, but looking at the upside that he brings, and Toronto has struggled against centers of late, so he is in play. So I think if you're playing a Lowry, I think you're best off playing Towns with him, hoping that the game stays close and they can both deliver huge upside. And they definitely have the potential to combine for about 90 to 100 fantasy points. So I think that's their ceiling right there, and I do like that for GPPs. Otherwise, I'm looking at Marcin Gortat. I'm looking at Rudy Gobert, just as options that are much safer in much better spots. You're looking at Portland, struggled against centers this season. Atlanta, we know we've been targeting. So both those guys have had good success against those opposing teams, as they should have already. So I just feel comfortable with Gobert, Gortat. Those are the guys I'm sticking around in. Jokic, always a GPP play. As we've seen, the minutes have been up and down as usual. The foul trouble gets there. 4, 5, 5 foul troubles over the last 3 games there, but 30, 40, and 38 fantasy points. 38 and 21 minutes against Dallas there. So you know what Jokic has done. If you're new, he's a high upside, high risk guy, but who can really pay off for tournaments. One guy to possibly take a look at if you get lower, Valanciunas is kind of taking a price dip here from where he was. He was up about 6K, 6,500 for a little bit. Come down, the minutes that were lacking. He still hasn't played over 30 since February 21st. So, but 31, 34, 22 fantasy points in the last 3 games. The 22 came against Utah, which is understandable. But double-doubles in the last 2. Cheap play against Brooklyn. He's averaged 14 and 11 in 2 games against Brooklyn this season. They've struggled against centers. He would be worth a look for me if you need to round out like a DK double center look, if you're looking for some value. But outside of that, you're not getting much lower, and you really don't need to be with Gobert and Gortat sitting in that range. So definitely take a look at them there. That's going to wrap things up here with the Mints to Win It. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.